The massive holographic display flickered to life in the darkened archive room of the Galactic Military Academy. 60 alien cadets from 12 different species sat in perfectly arranged rows, their various forms of eyes reflecting the blue glow emanating from the projection sphere hovering above their heads. Instructor Vex 9, a towering crystalline being whose body chimed softly with each movement, gestured toward the display with one of her forearms. Today we study the war records of species 784-C, commonly known as ... humans. A collective murmur rippled through the cadets. Zara, a young Catherian with iridescent scales and large, curious eyes, leaned forward in her seat. Her kind were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders, their homeworld having never seen conflict for over 3 millennia. The concept of war itself was as foreign to her as breathing underwater. "Why are we studying such a primitive species?" asked Thane, a Valorian, whose red skin pulsed with the aggressive energy typical of his warrior race. His people had conquered 17 star systems before joining the Galactic Federation. Oh, they haven't even achieved faster than light. Travel yet? Instructor Vexanine's crystalline face shifted into what might have been a smile. That, Cadet Thane, is precisely why we must study them. Sometimes the most dangerous enemies are those you underestimate. She touched a control panel with her lower right arm, and the hologram began to play footage from Earth's history. First images showed what appeared to be a peaceful blue-green world, with sprawling cities and technology that seemed quaint by galactic standards. Humans first achieved nuclear capability in their year 1945, Vex9 narrated as the peaceful scenes. Continued. By galactic standards, they are technologically adolescent. Their weapons are crude, their space travel limited to their own star system. Many species dismiss them as insignificant. Zara found herself relaxing. These humans looked harmless enough. Small, soft-bodied creatures with no natural weapons. No scales, no claws, no energy projection capabilities. How dangerous could they possibly be? Then the footage changed. The hologram now displayed grainy black and white images from something called World War II. Zara watched in growing horror as humans fought with a savagery that made her scales ripple with distress. The sheer scale of destruction was incomprehensible. Entire cities reduced to rubble, millions upon millions dead. This conflict lasted 6 of their years, Vexnine continued, her voice taking on a more serious tone. 55 million casualties. But this was not their largest war. Korath, a gentle healing singer whose species had evolved beyond physical conflict 10,000 years ago, began to emit a low, distressed harmonic from his throat. How many conflicts have they had? The historical records show continuous warfare throughout their entire recorded history, Vex9 replied. Major conflicts every few generations. Minor conflicts almost constantly. The hologram shifted. To show more recent footage, modern warfare. Zara watched in fascination and growing dread as humans developed increasingly sophisticated ways to destroy each other. Smart bombs that could think. Drones that hunted without human guidance. Weapons that could kill from thousands of miles away. But it wasn't just the technology that disturbed her. It was something else. Something in the way these humans fought. Notice their tactical adaptability. Vex9 pointed to a scene showing human soldiers improvising weapons from everyday objects. No formal military training, yet this individual has created an explosive device from agricultural fertilizer. Here, we see urban combat specialists using architecture itself as a weapon system. Thane, despite his warrior heritage, was beginning to look uncomfortable. They fight their own species with such intensity. Indeed, now observe this footage from their conflict in Vietnam. The hologram showed dense jungle warfare. Humans fighting in conditions that would challenge most galactic species, displaying an endurance that seemed impossible for such fragile-looking beings. Zara watched a human soldier continue fighting despite injuries that should have incapacitated him, using terrain and improvised tactics to defeat technologically superior enemies. This individual has been without food for 3 days, fighting in 98% humidity. Carrying 60 pounds of equipment, Vex9 narrated as they watched a single human hold off an entire squad. Notice that he does not retreat even when tactically disadvantaged. The room had grown silent, except for the soft sound of disturbed breathing from various species. This was not what any of them had expected. "But surely," said Liana, a delicate whisperwing whose species communicated primarily through pheromones. "This is historical. It must have evolved past such behavior by now." Svexanine's crystalline features seemed to darken. "Observe footage from their current era." What came next was modern combat. Humans fighting in urban environments, their tactics evolved and refined over centuries of warfare. But what struck the cadets most was not the sophistication of their weapons or strategies, it was their eyes. Even through the grainy footage, even across species barriers, there was something in human eyes during combat that transcended language or biology. A cold, calculating intensity that spoke of a predator species that had never truly stopped hunting. "These recordings are from last month," Vexanine said quietly. "They continue to refine their art of war, even as they explore space and develop technologies." For peace, Zara felt her scales flatten against her body in an involuntary fear response. Around her, she could see similar reactions from her classmates. Korth's healing songs had turned into distressed keening. Even Thane looked shaken. The instructor continued the presentation, showing more footage. Humans fighting in every conceivable environment, underwater, in Arctic conditions, in scorching deserts, in the vacuum of space during their primitive space station conflicts, always adapting, always finding new ways to overcome obstacles. "Here, we see their concept of special forces," Vex9 said, as the hologram showed humans emerging from impossible situations. Surviving for weeks behind enemy lines? Completing missions that should have been suicidal? These individuals volunteer for assignments with mortality rates exceeding 70%. "Volunteer?" whispered Nex, a logic-based silicon who processed information in pure mathematical terms. "They choose these missions. Humans have a concept called honor," Vexnine explained. "It often overrides their survival instincts." "Hey!" the footage continued. Human medics running into active fire zones to save wounded enemies. Human soldiers sharing their rations with enemy prisoners. Human pilots crashing their aircraft into enemy targets rather than allowing their missions to fail. But then came the footage that changed everything. "This," said Vexnine, "is from their Second World War. A human military unit discovered what their enemies had done to civilian populations. The hologram showed the liberation of concentration camps. Cadets watched in stunned silence as human soldiers, trained killers who had been fighting efficiently and dispassionately, suddenly transformed into something else entirely. Rage, pure. Terrifying rage. The tactical precision remained, but now it was fueled by something that transcended military doctrine. These humans had discovered that their enemies had committed atrocities against innocents, and their response was swift and merciless. Notice that their combat effectiveness actually increases when emotionally compromised by anger. Vex9 observed clinically, most species become less efficient fighters when emotional. Humans become more dangerous. Zara watched as human soldiers, who had been shown earlier treating enemy prisoners with dignity, now fought with a fury that made her entire body tremble. They didn't just defeat their enemies, they dismantled them with a systematic brutality that was somehow more terrifying, because it remained intelligent and organized. "This is what humans call righteous anger," the instructor continued. "They become most dangerous when fighting to protect others." The hologram showed the final push into Nazi Germany. Human forces moving with unstoppable momentum, their usual tactical patience replaced by something primal and terrifying. Zara realized she was watching a species that could switch between civilized restraint and absolute devastation based on their moral judgment of their enemies. As the session continued, the footage became more recent. Afghanistan fighting an enemy that used children as weapons and civilians as shields. Instead of becoming more brutal, the humans became more precise, developing tactics that could eliminate threats while protecting innocents, even when those innocents were being used against them. "This is perhaps their most disturbing characteristic," Vex-9 said as they watched human soldiers risking their lives to evacuate enemy civilians from a combat zone. They maintain their moral codes even when their enemies abandon all ethics. They become more dangerous to protect the innocent, but they never lose their fundamental decency. The room was now completely silent, except for the mechanical hum of the life support systems. 60 cadets from 12 species sat in stunned contemplation of what they had witnessed. But Instructor Zara finally managed to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you showing us this?" Vex-9 touched the control panel, and the holographic display shifted to show current intelligence reports. Earth, peaceful, and blue-green. As before, but now the data overlays showed something that made every cadet's blood run cold. "Because," said Vex-9, 3 days ago, "our deep space monitoring stations detected unusual energy signatures from the Sol system. Our xenobiologists believe the humans have achieved breakthrough propulsion technology. The implications hit the room like a physical force. A species that had refined warfare to an art form for their entire history was about to become spacefaring. They will be leaving their homeworld within the next 50 years, Vex-9 continued. When they do, they will encounter other species for the first time. The Galactic Federation must decide how to respond to this development." Thane, the warrior who had seemed so confident at the beginning of the session, raised a shaking hand. What are our options?" That said Vex-9 is why you are here. You are the future military leaders of your respective species. Your task is to develop contingency plans for first contact with humanity. The hologram now showed peaceful images again. Human cities, human families, human children playing in parks. But now the cadets knew what lay beneath that veneer of civilization. They'd seen what humans were capable of when threatened, when angry, when protecting those they loved. "Tomorrow," Vex-9 announced, "we will continue with combat footage from their Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts. Please review tonight's material and prepare your preliminary assessments." As the lights came up and the cadets began to file out, their conversations were subdued and worried. Many seemed to be reconsidering their career choices in Galactic. Military service Zara lingered behind, staring at the now empty holographic display. "Instructor Vex-9? Yes, Cadet Zara? Have you shown this footage to other classes? This is the third group to see it. What happened to the other cadets?" Vex-9's crystalline form chimed softly with what might have been sadness. 40% of the first group resigned from military service immediately after completing the course. 60% of the second group, they chose civilian careers in fields far from any potential conflict zones. Zara felt her scales ripple again. "Why do you continue to show it then?" "Because those who remain," Vex-9 said quietly. "Those who can watch this footage and still choose to serve, they understand what we may be facing. They will be better prepared to make the difficult decisions that first contact with humanity will require." As Zara walked back to her dormitory, her mind raced with everything she had seen. She thought about her peaceful homeworld, about her family who had never known war, about her own plans for a quiet career in galactic diplomacy. Those plans suddenly seemed very naive. Behind her, Instructor Vex-9 remained in the archive room, preparing the next day's materials. Tomorrow's footage would be worse, much worse. It would show humans under siege, outnumbered and outgunned, fighting with the desperation of cornered animals. But it would also show them never giving up, never surrendering, never accepting defeat as long as they drew breath. The instructor had not told the cadets the full truth about the human energy signatures detected by their monitoring stations. She had not mentioned that the reading suggested not just breakthrough propulsion, but breakthrough weapons technology as well. She had not told them that humanity appeared to be weaponizing. It's the same fundamental forces they were using for space travel. That revelation would come tomorrow, along with the combat footage that would drive another 40% of her students out of military service forever, because the galaxy was about to change, and very few beings were prepared for what was coming. Chapter 2. The breaking point. The archive room felt smaller today. Only 36 cadets had returned for the second session. 24 empty seats served as silent testimony to the impact of yesterday's footage. Zara had spent the entire night staring at the ceiling of her dormitory, unable to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those human faces during combat, cold, determined, utterly without mercy when protecting their own. Her roommate, a gentle Florelian named Petal, had transferred to botanical studies that morning. "I cannot study war after seeing that," Petal had whispered while packing her few belongings. "My people tend gardens. We nurture life. How could I prepare for combat against beings who have made destruction into an art form?" Now, looking around the diminished class, Zara wondered if she should have followed her roommate's example. Instructor Vex9 entered the room with her characteristic crystal chiming, but today the sound seemed more subdued. She paused, scanning the reduced number of students with what might have been approval. "I see many of your classmates have chosen different paths," she observed. "This is not a failure, it is wisdom. Those who remain understand that knowledge. However uncomfortable is necessary for the decisions we must make." Thane, still present, but visibly shaken from the previous day, raised his hand. "Instructor, will today's material be similar?" "Today will be worse," Vex9 replied without preamble, "but also necessary. Today you will see humanity under maximum stress. Today you will understand why they are considered the most dangerous species we have ever encountered." The holographic display activated, and immediately the atmosphere in the room changed. Gone were the historical black and white images. These were high-definition recordings, close enough to see individual faces, close enough to see the fear and determination in human eyes. "This footage comes from the siege of Stalingrad," Vex9 announced. "One of their most desperate urban conflicts. 23 million military and civilian casualties over 6 months of fighting." The hologram showed a city in ruins. Every building damaged, every street a battlefield. And in this hell, humans continued to fight with a tenacity that defied comprehension, observed the soldier. Vex9 highlighted a figure moving through the rubble. No food for 4 days. Ammunition running low. Temperature -40 degrees in their measurement system. His position is surrounded by enemy forces. The cadets watched as the human, instead of surrendering, began fashioning weapons from debris. A piece of metal became a spear, broken. Glass became improvised grenades. When conventional tactics failed, he started using psychological warfare, making noise to draw enemies into traps. "He holds this position for 3 more days," Vex9 continued, alone against dozens of enemy soldiers. Korith, the healing singer, was producing distressed harmonics again. "Why doesn't he retreat? Why doesn't he surrender?" "Because," said Vex9, "behind him are civilian refugees. He knows that retreat means their death." The footage continued, showing similar scenes throughout the city, humans fighting room by room, building by building. When they ran out of ammunition, they used bayonets. When their bayonets broke, they used their hands. When injuries should have incapacitated them, they continued fighting. Note their tactical adaptation. The instructor pointed out as they watched human soldiers turn civilian buildings into fortress systems. They are using urban architecture in ways its designers never intended. Kitchen utensils become weapons. Furniture becomes barriers. Children's toys become alarm systems. Zara found herself taking notes despite her horror. Tactical innovations were genuinely brilliant. These humans were solving complex military problems in real time, under maximum stress, using whatever materials they could find. But then the footage shifted to something that made several cadets gasp audibly. "This is Stalingrad Day 127, Vex9 announced. The enemy has begun executing civilian prisoners in view of human positions." The hologram showed human soldiers watching helplessly as their enemies killed innocent people, children, elderly, wounded civilians, specifically to provoke an emotional response. Most species would either become paralyzed by grief or lose tactical coherence due to rage, Vex9 observed clinically. Observe the human response. What the cadets saw was something unprecedented in galactic military history. The humans did become enraged, but they channeled that rage into something terrifyingly effective. Their tactical coordination actually improved, their precision increased. Their ability to inflict damage on their enemies became almost supernatural. "They are using their anger as fuel," whispered Nex, the Silicon cadet, his mathematical mind struggling to process the emotional variables. "Their efficiency increases proportionally to their emotional investment in the outcome." "Precisely," confirmed Vexnine. "This is what makes them unique among all known species. Emotional trauma makes them more dangerous, not less." The footage showed the human counterattack. Swift, brutal, and utterly without mercy for those who had killed civilians. But even in their fury, they continued to protect non-combatants, often at great personal risk. Watch this sequence carefully. Vex-9 directed their attention to a human soldier who had infiltrated an enemy position. He could eliminate all targets quickly with explosives. Instead, he chooses individual combat to avoid damaging a civilian. Shelter located beneath the enemy position. The human fought hand-to-hand against multiple opponents, taking severe injuries when he could have simply destroyed the entire building. He chose the harder path because it protected innocents. "This is the paradox of humanity," Vexnine explained. "They become most dangerous when protecting others. But they will accept extreme personal cost to minimize harm to innocents, even enemy innocents." The session continued with footage from more modern conflicts. Urban warfare in Iraq, where humans developed new tactics for fighting enemies who deliberately used civilian shields. Mountain warfare in Afghanistan, where they hunted adversaries through terrain that would challenge most galactic species. But the most disturbing footage came from their recent conflicts with non-state actors. This enemy uses child soldiers and civilian human shields. Vexnine narrated as they watched human forces engaging targets in a populated area. They deliberately positioned their weapons in schools and hospitals. The cadets watched in amazement as human soldiers developed real-time solutions to eliminate threats while protecting the very civilians their enemies were using as shields. Precision that bordered on the impossible. Tactical restraint that seemed to defy their aggressive nature. "See how they adapt their rules of engagement?" the instructor pointed out. "You could win these conflicts quickly with massive firepower. Instead, they choose methods that protect enemy civilians at the cost of their own soldiers' lives." Liana, the Whisperwing, released pheromones of confused distress. "I don't understand. They are willing to die to protect their enemies' children." "This is human morality under stress," Vexnine replied. "They maintain ethical standards even when their opponents abandon all ethics. It makes them predictable in some ways. They will always choose to protect innocents. But it also makes them incredibly dangerous to anyone who threatens those innocents." The hologram shifted to show more recent footage, humans in space, conducting their first orbital conflicts around their primitive space stations. Even in the vacuum of space, the same patterns emerged. Tactical brilliance combined with moral constraints that somehow made them more effective, not less. "This is why the Galactic Federation is concerned," Vexnine said, as the footage showed human astronauts conducting impossible rescue operations in hard vacuum. "They bring their warfare capabilities with them wherever they go, but they also bring their moral codes. They will fight to protect other species' innocence as fiercely as they protect their own." Thane raised his hand again, his warrior's pride clearly shaken. "Instructor, my people have conquered star systems. We pride ourselves on our military prowess. But watching these humans, I don't think we could match their intensity." "It has matched their intensity," Vex-9 confirmed. "But that is not the most concerning aspect of human military capability." She touched the control panel, and new footage appeared. This was recent, very recent. 3 days ago, our monitoring stations detected these energy signatures from human space facilities. The hologram showed massive construction projects in Earth's orbit, space platforms being built at an incredible pace. But the energy readings were all wrong. "Our analysts believe these are weapons platforms," Vexnine said quietly. "But the power signatures suggest weapon yields equivalent to stellar-class destructive capability." Several cadets made distressed sounds. Stellar-class weapons could destroy entire planets. "But that's impossible," protested Korath. "They've only been spacefaring for decades. How could they develop such advanced weaponry so quickly?" "Because," said Vex-9, They have been developing advanced weaponry their entire history. They simply applied their existing knowledge to space-based platforms. The implications were staggering. A species that had been contained to a single planet was about to possess the ability to destroy worlds. Furthermore, the instructor continued, our xenopsychologists have analyzed their behavioral patterns. When humans perceive a threat to their species, they respond with exponential escalation. If they believe another species poses an existential threat, they will respond with their full destructive capability. The room fell silent as the cadets absorbed this information. So what are our options? Asked Zara, barely able to speak above. A whisper that said Vex-9 is what you must determine. But first, you must understand the full scope of what we face. She activated new footage satellite imagery of Earth from the past month. They are mobilizing, she announced. Military. Production has increased by 300%. They are building ships designed for deep space operation. And they are doing all of this in complete unity. Unity, asked Nex. For the first time in their recorded history, all human nations are cooperating on a single project. Aside their traditional conflicts to focus on space expansion, the footage showed massive industrial complexes being constructed, raw materials being processed at unprecedented rates, and manufacturing facilities producing spacecraft components around the clock. Our estimates suggest they will achieve interstellar travel capability within 10 years, Vex-9 said. Possibly sooner. As the session ended and the remaining cadets filed out, their conversations were even more subdued than the day before. Several more announced their intention to transfer to civilian programs. Zara remained behind again, but this time she was joined by Thane and a few others. Instructor, Thane said, if you were in our position, what would you recommend? X9 was quiet for a long moment, her crystalline form chiming softly. I would recommend, she said finally, that we find a way to ensure humanity sees us as something worth protecting rather than something that threatens them. And if that's not possible, asked Zara, the instructor's response chilled them all. We hope they maintain their moral constraints when they reach the stars, because if they ever decide that another species poses an existential threat to humanity. She paused, looking at the now empty holographic display. I have seen no evidence that anything in the galaxy could stop them. As the cadets left the archive room, none of them noticed the small recording device Vex-9 activated after they were gone. Her daily reports to High Command were becoming increasingly urgent, because there was footage she had not shown them yet. Footage of human nuclear testing, footage of weapons that could crack continents, footage of delivery systems that could target multiple planets simultaneously, and most disturbing of all, footage of humans discussing theoretical scenarios for defending against alien invasion. The cadets thought they had seen humanity at its most dangerous. They had no idea what was coming tomorrow. Chapter 3. The truth. Revealed, only 18 cadets remained. The archive room felt cavernous now, with 3/4 of the seats empty. Word had spread throughout the academy about the Human Studies course. Enrollment in military programs had dropped by 60% across all species. Zara sat in the front row now, her scales pale but her resolve firm. Beside her, Thane looked like he had aged years in just 2 days. Korath had stopped his healing songs entirely. They had become too discordant, too filled with distress. Before we begin today's session, Instructor Vex-9 announced, I must inform you that this will be the final day of instruction. High Command has decided that further exposure to human warfare footage poses a risk to military recruitment. Several cadets looked relieved. Zara felt only a growing sense of dread. However, the instructor continued, U-18 represent the future military leadership of your species. You have chosen to complete this course despite its psychological impact. You will be the ones making decisions about humanity in the years to come. She paused, her crystalline form chiming with what sounded like regret. Therefore, today you will see everything. You will understand the full scope of human capability, and you will learn the classified information that High Command has decided you need to know. The holographic display activated, but instead of the expected combat footage, it showed a peaceful conference room. Beings from various species sat around a circular table, the Galactic Federation High Council. This meeting took place 6 months ago, Vex9 explained. The subject was humanity's imminent breakthrough in interstellar travel. The cadets watched as Federation leaders debated options for first contact. The discussion was civilized, intellectual, focused on protocols and procedures. Now observe this meeting, which took place after our intelligence services obtained the first samples of human warfare footage. A new recording began. The same council chamber, but the atmosphere was completely different. The beings around the table looked disturbed, frightened. Their voices were hushed and urgent. "They are discussing preemptive action," Vex9 said quietly. "Some council members believe humanity should be neutralized before they achieve interstellar capability." Zara felt her scales flatten against her body. Neutralized. Planetary sterilization, the instructor confirmed. Elimination of the human species before they can spread beyond their home system. The hologram showed the debate growing more heated. Species representatives arguing for and against what amounted to genocide. The decision was made to postpone action pending further intelligence gathering, Vex9 continued. That intelligence is what you have been viewing over the past 2 days. Display shifted to show more recent footage, the same council meeting again, but from just 3 days ago. This is the emergency session called after our monitoring stations detected human weapons testing. The atmosphere in this meeting was pure terror. Beings that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were openly discussing evacuation plans. "They detect?" asked Thane, though his voice suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "This," said Vex-9. The holographic display exploded into brilliance. When the glare faded, the cadets found themselves viewing footage from space. A perspective from one of humanity's orbital installations. Below them, Earth hung in space, peaceful and blue. But in the distance, something was happening to Earth's moon. Humans conducted their first test of what they call a relativistic kinetic weapon. Vex-9 narrated as they watched. Observe. A tiny object no larger than a grain of sand struck the lunar surface at 98% of light speed. The impact was ... incomprehensible. The entire visible hemisphere of the moon lit up like a small sun. When the glare faded, a crater the size of a small continent had been carved into the lunar surface. They accelerated a metal pellet to near light speed using their new propulsion technology, the instructor explained as several cadets made distressed sounds. The kinetic energy alone was equivalent to a stellar-class explosive device. But that's... Next struggled to process the mathematics. That's enough energy to crack a planet's crust. Precisely. And that was their first test. Intelligence suggests they have been scaling up the technology. The hologram shifted to show satellite imagery of human space installations. Massive construction. Projects were visible. Arrays of acceleration devices pointed in all directions. They call it their planetary defense grid, Vex-9 said. But the targeting systems are configured for interstellar distances. The implications were staggering. Humanity had developed the ability to strike targets across interstellar space with planet-killing force. How? How is this possible? Whispered Liana. They're barely out of their technological infancy. Because, said Vex-9, they've spent their entire history perfecting the art of killing. When they finally achieved advanced technology, they immediately weaponized it. The display showed more footage, human factories converting civilian spacecraft into military vessels, manufacturing plants producing ammunition for weapons that could destroy worlds, entire cities being converted into military production centers. They are not just building a space fleet, the instructor continued. They are building an interstellar war machine. But why? Asked Korath. What do they think they're defending against? Vex-9 activated new footage, and the cadets found themselves watching human entertainment media, their fiction, films, and television shows. Nearly every piece of human fiction about space exploration includes hostile alien contact, she observed. They have culturally conditioned themselves to expect galactic conflict. The entertainment footage showed humans fighting aliens in every conceivable scenario. Always outnumbered, always outgunned, but always finding ways to win through tactical brilliance and sheer determination. Their fiction consistently portrays aliens as either conquering invaders or genocidal threats, Vexnine continued. They fully expect that contact with other species will result in war, so they're preparing for a war that doesn't exist, said Thane. Isn't it? Vexnine asked quietly. She activated footage from the most recent High Council meeting. The same beings, who had been debating humanitarian concerns 6 months ago, were now discussing deployment of the Federation fleet. The Council has voted, she announced. Humanity will be contacted within the next year, while they are still contained to their home system. If they refuse to submit to Federation oversight of their weapons programs, she didn't need to finish the sentence. First contact will be military contact, Zara said, understanding flooding through her. And given human psychological conditioning, they will interpret any military contact as a prelude to invasion, Vexnine confirmed. The cadets sat in stunned silence as the full scope of the situation became clear. Humanity was preparing for war against aliens who didn't exist, while those same aliens were preparing for war against humanity. There is more, the instructor said, activating new footage. This was recent surveillance of human military planning sessions. The cadets watched as human strategists discussed theoretical scenarios for defending against alien invasion. The tactical sophistication was breathtaking. Humans had developed contingency plans for every conceivable form of attack. They had created weapons specifically designed to counter theoretical alien advantages. They had prepared their entire species for total war against enemies they had never seen. They call it the Independence Day Protocol, Vexnine explained, referencing one of their fictional works. If contacted by aliens, they assume hostile intent and respond with immediate maximum force. But that's insane, protested Korath. They'll start a war based on fiction, will they? Asked the instructor. Activated footage of the Federation fleet massing near the edge of human space? Or are they simply responding rationally too? The actual threat they face? The hologram showed the massive military buildup on both sides. Humanity converting their entire industrial capacity to weapons production, while the Federation assembled the largest military force in galactic history. Both sides are now convinced that the other poses an existential threat, Vexnine observed. Both sides are correct. She paused the display on an image that made every cadet's blood run cold. Earth's orbital defense platforms, their weapons charged and ready, pointed at the approaching Federation fleet. First contact will occur in approximately 11 months, she announced. Based on current preparations on both sides, it will be the largest military engagement in galactic history. Surely there must be another way, said Zara desperately. Some form of peaceful contact, some way to avoid this confrontation. Vexnine activated one final piece of footage. It showed human children in schools learning military tactics alongside their regular studies. It showed civilian populations conducting air raid drills. It showed an entire species united in preparation for war. Humans have a saying, she said quietly. If you want peace, prepare for war. They have been preparing for this war their entire history. They are as ready as any species can be. She turned to face the 18 remaining cadets. The question, she said, is whether we are ready for them. The holographic display shut down, leaving the room in relative darkness. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Thane raised his hand. What are our orders? You will be assigned to various Federation commands, Vexnine replied. Your mission is to find a way to avoid the complete destruction of both civilizations. Because make no mistake, if this conflict begins, it will not end until one side is completely extinct. And if we can't find a way? Asked Zara. The instructor's crystalline form chimed softly with sadness. Then you will have the honor of participating in the last war the galaxy will ever see, she said. Because whoever survives it will be so damaged that spacefaring civilization itself may not recover. As the cadets filed out for the last time, their conversations were urgent and practical now. They spoke of communication protocols, of peaceful contact scenarios, of desperate attempts to avoid catastrophe. Behind them, Instructor Vexnine began preparing her final report to High Command. She had trained these 18 cadets to understand humanity's military capabilities, but she had not told them everything. She had not shown them the footage of human deep space monitoring stations, which had already detected the approaching Federation fleet. She had not told them that humanity's planetary defense grid was actually an offensive weapons system capable of striking targets anywhere in the galaxy. Most importantly, she had not revealed that human intelligence services had already intercepted Federation communications, knew exactly what was coming. The war both sides feared was no longer a possibility. It was inevitable. Chapter 4. The Last Hope 6 months. Later, Zara stood on the observation deck of the Federation flagship Harmony's Edge, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger in the viewport. Around her, the largest military fleet in galactic history hung in space like a constellation of death. She had been assigned to the First Contact Division, along with 5 other graduates from the Human Studies course. Their mission was supposedly diplomatic, to establish peaceful communication with humanity before the military option became necessary. But looking at the weapons arrays surrounding her, Zara knew the truth. They were here as witnesses to genocide, not as diplomats. Final approach in 6 hours, announced Commander Yextal, massive gorillian whose species had evolved from pack hunters. All diplomatic personnel report to Briefing Room 7. Zara made her way through the corridors of the flagship, passing squadrons of Federation soldiers from dozens of species. They all looked nervous. Word had spread through the fleet about what they were facing in the briefing room. She found the other Human Studies graduates. Thane looked grim, but determined. Korath had stopped producing any sound at all. His healing songs had been replaced by complete silence. Only 12 of the original 18 had accepted military assignments. The others had chosen civilian postings as far from the front lines as possible. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, Commander Yextal began the briefing. We are now within range of human defensive systems. Our sensors indicate they are tracking our approach. The holographic display showed Earth's orbital installations. The defensive grid was fully active, with enough firepower to destroy the entire Federation fleet several times over. Furthermore, the commander continued, we have detected signs of human military buildup throughout their system. They have weaponized their asteroid mining operations and converted civilian spacecraft into military vessels. Zara studied the tactical display. Human ships were positioned at strategic points throughout the solar system. They had turned their entire star system into a fortress. Our mission remains unchanged, Yextal announced. We will attempt peaceful contact. If that fails, we will neutralize the human threat before they can spread beyond their home system. Zara raised her hand. What are our rules of engagement if humans respond with hostility? The commander's expression darkened. Total warfare. We cannot allow this species to survive if they prove hostile. They are simply too dangerous. As the briefing continued, Zara felt a growing sense of despair. Both sides were so convinced of the other's hostile intent that peaceful contact seemed impossible. After the briefing, she found herself in the ship's archive room, reviewing the footage from her training one more time. The images of human warfare, human determination, human tactical brilliance played in her mind. Second thoughts? Asked a voice behind her. She turned to find Thane standing in the doorway, his red skin pale with stress. I keep thinking there. It has to be another way, she replied. Some method of contact that doesn't trigger their defensive instincts. Have you found one? Zara gestured helplessly at the holographic display. No. They're expecting invasion. We're bringing the largest military fleet in galactic history to their doorstep. How could they interpret that as anything but hostile? Because that's what it is, said Thane quietly. We're not here for first contact. We're here to eliminate a threat. But what if they're not actually a threat? What if they're just scared? Thane activated the display, showing footage of human weapons testing. Look at this again. Really look at it. They have the power to destroy planets, and they're building more weapons every day. How are they not a threat? Zara studied the footage, but now she saw something different. Look at the targeting systems, she said. They're all defensive. Every weapon is designed to protect their home system. For now, Thane replied. But what happens when they achieve interstellar travel? What happens when they encounter species they consider hostile? Before Zara could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red as the crew rushed to battle stations. All personnel to emergency stations, came the announcement. We are receiving a transmission from Earth. In the command center, the main display showed a human face, middle-aged, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. Behind him, Zara could see what looked like a sophisticated command center. Hey, this is General Sarah Chen, speaking for the United Earth Defense Force, the human said in accented but clear galactic standard. We are aware of your presence in our system. Commander Yextal stepped forward. This is Commander Yextal of the Galactic Federation. Ought we come in peace, seeking diplomatic contact with your species. The human's expression didn't change. Why have you brought a military fleet to our doorstep? Standard first contact protocol requires cut the diplomatic nonsense, General Chen interrupted. We know who you are. We know what you're planning. We've been intercepting your communications for months. Chill ran through the command center. Humans had been monitoring Federation communications. They knew about the planetary sterilization. Contingency. We have prepared a response, General Chen continued. If you withdraw from our system immediately, we will open formal diplomatic channels through neutral space. If you remain, we will consider your presence an act of war. General, Commander Yextal said carefully, we have no hostile intent. You have come to our system with enough firepower to crack planets, the human replied. Your own communications discuss neutralizing the human threat. What part of that sounds peaceful to you? The commander looked around the bridge, clearly unprepared for this level of human intelligence gathering. However, General Chen continued, we are prepared to offer an alternative. What kind of alternative? Single combat, the human said. Choose your best warrior. Choose ours. Winner takes all. If your champion wins, humanity will submit to Federation oversight. If our champion wins, you withdraw, and we establish diplomatic relations as equals. The suggestion was so unexpected that nobody responded for several seconds. That's not how interstellar diplomacy works, stammered Commander Yextal. How human diplomacy works, General Chen replied. We don't fight wars we can avoid, but we also don't submit to threats if we refuse. The human's expression hardened. Then you get to find out what happens when you threaten a species that has spent its entire history preparing for war. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence, said Thane quietly. That's not how I expected first contact to go. They're bluffing, declared the tactical officer. No single species could threaten the entire Federation fleet, are they? Asked Zara. She was remembering the footage from her training. The images of humans fighting against impossible odds and winning. Commander Yextal was conferring with his senior staff when new alarms began sounding. Sir, reported the sensor officer, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human system. They're charging their weapons? All of them? Yes, sir. Every platform, every ship, every installation. They're preparing for total system defense. The main display showed the tactical situation. Earth's orbital defense grid was fully active. Asteroid mining stations had revealed hidden weapons arrays, and human ships were moving into attack formations. They're not bluffing, Zara said quietly. Numbers don't lie, protested the tactical officer. We outnumbered them 10,000 to 1. Numbers didn't save the Germans at Stalingrad, Zara replied. Now the British at Rorke's Drift, or any of the countless armies that underestimated human determination. This is different, Commander Yextal said. This is modern warfare. Superior numbers and technology, which is exactly what every species that fought humans thought, interrupted Thane. Right up until they lost. The debate was interrupted by another transmission from Earth. This time, the human on screen was different, younger, wearing civilian clothes, but with the same determined expression. This is President Martinez of the United Earth Government, the human said. We are transmitting on all frequencies to ensure this message reaches every species in your fleet. What is she doing? Wondered the communications officer. We know many of you have been told that humanity is a threat to galactic peace, President Martinez continued. We know you have been shown footage of our wars, our weapons, our capacity for violence. Zara felt her scales ripple with unease.
Ow!
Could they know about the training footage? What you have not been told, the human continued, is that every war we have fought has been in defense of our home, our families, our way of life. We do not seek conquest. We do not desire empire. We want only to be left in peace. The transmission showed images of Earth, cities, forests, oceans, children playing in parks. But we will not submit to threats, President Martinez said, her voice hardening. We will not bow to ultimatums. If you have come to our system to destroy us, then you will face the full fury of a species that has never known surrender. However, she continued, we offer you a choice. Withdraw now, and we will establish diplomatic relations as equals. Remain and face the consequences of threatening humanity. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in debate.
Ow.
Officers argued for immediate withdrawal, others for immediate attack. The decision is not ours to make, Commander Yextal announced. I'm contacting High Command for orders. But before he could establish communication, the sensor officer reported new contacts. Sir, we're detecting ships approaching from the outer system. Multiple contacts moving at high velocity. Human reinforcements. Negative, sir. The configurations don't match human designs. The main display showed the approaching vessels. They were massive, heavily armed, and flying in formation with the Federation fleet. This is Admiral Kexavoth. Of the Hegemony Warfleet came a new transmission. We have come to assist in the neutralization of the human threat. Zara felt her blood run cold. The Hegemony were the most aggressive species in the galaxy, barely. Contained members of the Federation who had been looking for an excuse to resume their conquest campaigns. Admiral Commander Yextal replied, "This is a Federation operation. We don't require assistance." "The High Council disagrees," Admiral Kexavoth replied. "We have new intelligence about human capabilities. The threat is greater than initially assessed." "What intelligence?" "Observe." The display showed new footage. Human deep space facilities much larger than previously detected. Manufacturing complexes producing weapons on an industrial scale. Most disturbing of all, evidence of human colonies beyond Earth. "They already have interstellar capability," Admiral Kexavoth announced. "There are human settlements in 6 nearby systems. The containment has already failed." The news hit the command center like a physical blow. Humans had already spread beyond Earth, then planetary sterilization would not eliminate the threat. Furthermore, the Hegemony Admiral continued, "Our intelligence suggests they have been preparing for this confrontation for decades. They knew we would come eventually." "How is that possible?" asked Commander Yextal. "Because they have been monitoring our communications longer than we realized. They have been preparing for war against us since they first achieved spaceflight." The implications were staggering. Humanity had been preparing for galactic war for decades, knowing that contact with other species would likely be hostile. "Our orders are clear," Admiral Kexavoth declared. "Total elimination of human civilization. All colonies, all ships, all installations, nothing can be allowed to survive." "Those are not Federation orders," protested Commander Yextal. "They are now. The High Council has transferred operational command to the Hegemony. We will handle the human problem permanently." Zara watched in horror as Hegemony ships began moving into attack formation. These weren't ships designed for precision warfare or minimal casualties. These were built for total destruction. "We need to warn them," she whispered to Thane. "Warn who? The humans? They think they're facing a diplomatic fleet. They don't know what's coming." "It's too late," Thane replied. "And even if we could warn them, what difference would it make?" Before Zara could respond, new alarms began sounding throughout the ship. But these weren't Federation alarms. "Sir," reported the sensor officer, his voice shaking, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the human system. Power levels are off the charts." The main display showed Earth's orbital defense grid activating. But this wasn't the same level of activity they had seen before. This was something else entirely. They're not just charging their weapons, the officer continued. They're charging something else, something we've never seen before. What kind of something? Demanded Commander Yextel. I don't know, sir. But the energy output is equivalent to a small star. As they watched, every human installation in the system began to glow with barely contained energy. The space around Earth itself seemed to shimmer. With power, they knew, Zara realized. They knew the hegemony would come. They've been preparing for this specific scenario. Preparing what? Asked Thane. Their answer came in the form of another transmission from Earth. This time, it was General Chen again, but her expression was different. Colder, more determined. This is General Chen to all hostile vessels in the Sol system. She announced, we know you have come to destroy us. Know you believe us to be a threat to galactic peace. She paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that seemed to see through the transmission to the beings watching her. You're correct, she said simply. We are a threat. We have always been a threat. And now you get to learn why. The transmission ended, and immediately every human installation in the system began to discharge its stored energy. What happened next would be remembered as the moment that changed galactic history forever. #. Epilogue. The New Galaxy * 5 years. After the Battle of Sol * Zara stood in the Memorial Hall of the rebuilt Galactic Federation Academy. Looking at the wall of names, thousands of beings from dozens of species, all casualties of what historians now called the First Human War, the war that had lasted exactly 14 minutes. You come here often, observed a familiar voice behind her. She turned to find Thane, approaching, his red skin bearing the scars of that day. He wore the uniform of a Federation diplomat now, rather than a military officer. I keep trying to understand how we got it so wrong, Zara replied. How we so completely misunderstood what we were facing. Did we? Moved to stand beside her, looking at the memorial wall. We knew they were dangerous. We knew they were militaristic. We knew they would fight to defend themselves. But we thought we understood the scope of their capabilities. Maybe that was our mistake. Maybe we thought we could measure human capability. By looking at human history? Zara nodded, remembering that day 5 years ago. The moment when Earth's orbital defense grid had activated not just defensive weapons, but a space-time manipulation system that had turned the entire Sol system into a weapon. The Federation and hegemony fleets had been trapped in a gravity well that compressed space-time itself. Ships designed to travel between stars had been unable to move more than a few kilometers in any direction. Then came the kinetic bombardment. Not from weapons platforms, but from the asteroids themselves. Humanity had spent decades positioning rocky bodies throughout their system, turning them into guidance systems for relativistic projectiles. The combined fleets had been destroyed in minutes. Thousands of ships, millions of crew members eliminated. With surgical precision, but that hadn't been the most shocking part. The restraint, Zara said quietly. That's what I still can't understand. They could have destroyed us all, but they chose not to. They only targeted military vessels, Thane agreed. Even when they had us completely helpless, they spared the hospital ships, the diplomatic vessels, the support craft. The aftermath had been unprecedented in galactic history. Humanity had emerged from the Battle of Sol as the dominant military power in the galaxy. But instead of pursuing conquest, they had done something no species had ever done before. They had offered peace. The terms were generous, Zara continued. Full diplomatic recognition, trade agreements, cultural exchange programs. They asked for nothing except to be left alone, and the galaxy accepted. What choice did we have? Through the Memorial Hall's windows, Zara could see the New Earth Embassy, a gleaming structure that served as humanity's diplomatic center. Human representatives worked alongside beings from dozens of species, establishing trade relationships and cultural exchanges. But everyone knew the truth. The embassy was also a fortress. The humans who smiled and negotiated and shared their technology were the same species that had casually destroyed the largest military fleet in galactic history. The Academy is different now, Thane observed. Everything is different now. Galactic Federation Academy had been rebuilt around a new curriculum. Instead of studying how to fight other species, cadets now learned human tactical doctrine. Instead of preparing for conquest, they studied human concepts of defensive warfare, because humanity had proven that the best defense was preparation for total annihilation of any threat. "Are you staying for the ceremony?" Thane asked. "I wouldn't miss it." Today marked the 5th anniversary of the Battle of Sol, and humanity was unveiling their latest gift to the galaxy, a new deep space monitoring network that would detect threats from outside the galactic community, because the humans had made it clear that while they had no interest in conquest, they would not tolerate any species that threatened the new galactic peace. As beings from dozens of species gathered in the memorial hall, Zara reflected on how completely the galaxy had changed. The old Federation had been built on the principle of mutual defense against external threats. The new Federation was built on the principle of mutual defense against anyone who threatened the peace, and that peace was guaranteed by a species that had proven they could end galactic civilization if they chose to. "Do you think they planned this?" Thane asked quietly. "The whole situation, making us think they were a threat, forcing us to attack, then demonstrating their true capabilities." "I think," Zara replied, "that they did exactly what they've always done. They prepared for the worst possible scenario, and then responded appropriately when it occurred. And now they're preparing for the next worst possible scenario, whatever that might be." The ceremony began with representatives from every species in the galaxy paying tribute to the fallen.
Ow.
But it ended with something unprecedented. A human speaker addressing the assembled beings.
We did not choose to be warriors," said Admiral.
Chen, the same human who had been a general during the battle. "We became warriors because our history taught us that peace is only possible when those who threaten it know the cost of aggression." She paused, looking out at the assembled representatives. "Of galactic civilization, today, we offer you a choice that we never had," she continued. "You can choose peace, knowing that it will be protected. You can choose cooperation, knowing that it will be supported. You can choose to build a better galaxy, knowing that those who would tear it down will face consequences they cannot imagine." As the ceremony concluded and the beings began to disperse, Zara found herself thinking about the human studies course that had changed her life. The course that had been designed to prepare military officers for war against humanity. Instead, it had prepared them for peace with humanity. "What are you going to do now?" Thane asked, as they walked through the academy grounds. "I've been offered a position in the new Threat Assessment Division," Zara replied. "They want beings who understand how to evaluate species that might pose a threat to galactic stability. And you're going to take it? Someone has to. The galaxy is a big place. There are species out there we haven't encountered yet. Some of them might be even more dangerous than we thought humans were." "It's more dangerous than humans." Zara paused at the entrance to the Earth Embassy, looking up at the structure that represented humanity's presence in galactic civilization. It was beautiful, welcoming, and peaceful. It was also the most heavily defended building in the galaxy. "The thing about humans," she said quietly, "is that they're not actually the most dangerous species in the galaxy because of their weapons, or their tactics, or their willingness to fight. Then why? Because they're the most dangerous species that chose to be peaceful. They could have conquered the galaxy 5 years ago. They chose not to. They could eliminate any threat to their interests. They choose not to. Instead, they protect everyone else." "Exactly. And that makes them the most dangerous species of all. Because if something ever threatens them enough to make them abandon their moral constraints," Zara didn't finish the thought. She didn't need to, because everyone in the galaxy now understood that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactical brilliance. It was their choice to use that power responsibly, and everyone prayed that choice would never be tested. She entered the Earth's embassy for her first day of work in the new galactic order. Zara reflected on the irony of the situation. The course designed to prepare military officers for war against humanity had instead prepared them for a galaxy where war itself had become obsolete, because humanity had proven that the best way to prevent war was to be so prepared for it that nobody would dare start one. The galaxy was peaceful now. Not because conflict was impossible, but because everyone understood the price of breaking that peace, and that price was enforced by a species that had turned the art of war into the foundation of lasting peace. The new galaxy was better than the old one. Safer, more prosperous, more cooperative, but it was also a galaxy where everyone knew that peace existed only because humanity allowed it to exist, and that was a truth that would shape galactic civilization for millennia to come. Asterisk in the depths of space. Edge of the galaxy. Sensors detected something approaching. Something that had been traveling between galaxies for millions of years. Something that had consumed entire civilizations. Asterisk, asterisk when the threat was identified. The response was swift and unanimous. Humanity would handle it because that's what they did. They protected the peace by any means necessary. Asterisk.